Petra was a Nabatean community inhabited 1,000 years before Christ, 3,000 years ago, in sandstone caves, right in the middle of the Silk Road, which was the main thoroughfare for the transfer of goods and the like during those years, 3,000 years ago. And it was really amazing to see how they developed their sewer system, how they collected water in this arid area, and how they fortified their areas to protect themselves from their enemies. And it was really, really interesting. We got there the afternoon before, ready to tour this morning. About 4:30 in the morning, I was raised out of bed by this loud noise. And I said, what is going on here? Well, it was this imam guy on a loudspeaker calling the Muslims to their first morning prayer. Very unsettling. It almost scared me, but I was awake for the rest of the time. We stayed in the same hotel the next night. And as the loudspeaker came on the following morning, I found a special kind of solace. I knew what was happening. They were going to pray. I go to pray. How neat. Maybe we're a little more alike than we think. Well, I know we can come up with some reasons how we're not alike. But maybe we ought to just concentrate on the way we're alike. We went to India, into a wonderful little, big town, metropolitan town called Jodhpur. I have not been to Mumbai. If you saw Slumdog Millionaire, I can tell you that Jodhpur is just like what you saw in that movie. Muddy streets in the middle of town with confusion and carts and cows, citizens, and cars, all going in mega different directions at breakneck speed. And I promise you, this is the truth. I saw a young lady, mother, or possibly an older sister, bathing her infant child in the mud puddle in the middle of the street while all of this was going on. Can you believe that? We went outside the city into a barren area where a bunch of nomadic herdsmen had their base camp. And these people herd their people, sheep, goats, and other things. I don't think they do cows there because they're sacred. And they would follow the rains around through this desert to give their livestock nourishment. And it was an amazing area, desert. It made our South Dakota Badlands look like a rainforest. But each of the places, and this was their base camp, and they each had a domicile, a place that they came back to at the end of their rainy seasons. And it was primitive at best, open air, part of it roofed, part of it not. Clean, well maintained, and each one had a little place in this makeshift house with an altar. And we were told the people would gather there every day and say their prayers together. I don't know if we could add up all the square footage that we all have in all of the houses we have, all through our life here. Well, I would respectfully suggest there probably isn't one altar in the whole place. But in this little makeshift place right outside Italy, or of India, altars. Last year, Janet put together a wonderful trip from the Danube to the Main to the Rhine River. We started in Budapest. Loren and Gail went over a few days early, number one, for Loren to get over the jet lag. Number two, to have some time with some special friends that we've met in Budapest through other friends in past years. George and Augie Hearn, just wonderful people. They have a beautiful chateau up on a mountain, a green lush mountain overlooking Pest. And we were invited to their home for dinner, which is a wonderful experience. Augie is an amazing cook. George is a Jew. One of the most devout, incessant Jewish individuals I think I might have ever met. His faith is so important to him. He'll tell you about it, and he'll talk about it, and he's just there. He grew up under communism when his religion was frowned upon. Now he's in a free country, and he would tell you that even though it's free, the Jews are accepted. George had just celebrated his 60th birthday, And for his 60th birthday, he went back to the Holy City to say his prayers and visit the special religious areas that were significant to him and his faith. We were excited to hear his stories, and he had stacks and stacks of pictures because Harvey and Cynth and Gail and I were going to Israel just a couple weeks after that. It was our first trip there. And he showed us the pictures, and he told us how he walked from spot to spot, like the Wailing Wall and the various synagogues and the places that were so important to the Jewish religion. And he said his prayers. And he went to each place, and he said his prayers. And we're sitting at this table after a lovely meal, having a great glass of wine, listening to his Ella Fitzgerald record collection. And he leaned across the table and he put his hand on my wrist, and he said, "Loren, when I finished my prayers, I went to where Jesus walked, and I prayed for him too." Wow. The most devout Jew I've ever met in my life, he prayed for my Lord and Savior too. A few years ago, we were in Budapest, and George invited us to a lovely string concert at the large, giant synagogue right in the middle of Budapest. I'm sure you walked by it, those that were on the trip. It's a beautiful place. We got there early, and our seats were up in the balcony around on the right side. And when we were watching and the people were filling in for the concert, it was going to be full that night. And after a few minutes, I nudged my friend George, and I said, "You know, you Jews and us Christians are all alike. First guy in sits on the end of the pew, and everybody else has to crawl." Now the Buddhists, when it comes to prayer, the Buddhists, they know what they're doing, I'll tell you. You know what this is? Some call it a Buddhist prayer wheel, some call it a Tibetan prayer wheel. In here, I'll get this open, are 50,000 prayers written in Sanskrit. When we were in Kathmandu, you'd see these little old ladies walking around the street, and every time you twirl it, you're praying 50,000 times, 50, 100, 150. If the average Christian would pray 3 times a day for a year, that'd be 1,095 prayers, 1,100 prayers. If you lived to be 100 years old, that'd be 110,000 prayers you pray in a whole life. 50, 100. Okay, we're done. And on top of that, you talk about efficiency. Down in the middle of the square in Kathmandu is a giant silo-looking thing, just like you might see on one of Ron's farms. Smaller, on a spindle, with all this hieroglyphics and etchings and word-type stuff on it, with big handles on it. And you can walk by it, and you can pull it, and it goes around and around. 500 prayers, 1,000 prayers, billions of prayers, all of it. Think about if you wanted to pray, and they were trying to tell you you couldn't. We left Kathmandu, flew into China in order to fly to Tibet. You know about Tibet, a protectorate now of the Chinese government, and they're doing their very best to eliminate the Buddhist religion in Tibet. You have to